Hi, my name's Bruce. The night my brother accused me of theft was the night my family stopped pretending they loved me. They sat me down, looked me in the eye, and tore apart everything I had built with a smile. But it wasn't Julian's lie that broke me. It was what his wife whispered after the room went silent. And once you hear it, you'll understand why I can never unhear it. Want to know what she said? It started with a text. Julian never texts me. He doesn't even like using his phone unless it's for something that benefits him. That night, around 4:37 p.m., his name popped up on my screen. Dinner at our place tonight, 7 sharp. Mom's coming. You don't want to disappoint her again. No hello, no smiley face, just pressure wrapped in politeness. I stared at it for a while. We hadn't spoken in months. More like he hadn't included me in anything for months. But suddenly now I get an invite to dinner. And on such short notice. Something was off. I should have said no. But part of me, maybe the part still trying to hold the damn family together, typed back, sure. Truth is, I was always the one who bent first, the youngest, the one who had to understand. Growing up, it was Julian who ran things. He had a way of making guilt sound like concern. You don't want to make Mom sad again, do you? That line echoed in my head. He knew exactly how to play it. By the time I pulled into their driveway, the sky was turning that soft Indiana gray, where the light disappears quicker than you expect. Their house looked the same, neat, sterile, almost too clean. I stepped out, straightened my jacket, and walked toward a night I already regretted agreeing to. Inside, the warmth hit me, fake, like the air freshener that smelled too citrusy to be real. The living room buzzed with polite conversation, but when I walked in, it dipped for a beat too long. "Bruce," Nadine greeted me, lips stretched thin. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "Glad you could make it." She stepped aside but didn't really welcome me in. The kids were there, Claire and Max. They barely looked at me. Max was glued to his phone, and Claire offered a small wave like she was being coached. I looked around and noticed the table. My seat was the only one set without a wine glass, and it was a little off to the side, like I was an afterthought. Julian came up behind me, clapped a hand on my shoulder. "There he is," he said a little too loud. "The man of the hour." I smiled tight. Didn't know I was the star tonight. "Oh, don't be modest," he chuckled, guiding me toward the table. "We've missed you." Missed me? I'd been less than 2 miles away for years. Nobody called, nobody visited, and now I'm suddenly missed. Dinner started with small talk. Julian talked about some renovation he was doing in the backyard. Nadine chimed in with updates about Claire's dance recital. Everything sounded normal, on the surface. But then the jabs started, soft and sharp. Julian mentioned how some folks don't understand the value of hard work. Nadine laughed and added something about people expecting handouts these days. Their eyes didn't need to look at me. I felt the aim of every word. I kept chewing my chicken, nodding politely. But inside, I felt it boiling. Then I spoke, low and clear. "Don't mistake my silence for acceptance." The table went quiet for half a second. Then Julian raised his glass. "To family," he said, like nothing happened. Nadine turned to me, all smiles again. "So, Bruce, how's the new job going?" She knew damn well I'd been laid off 3 weeks ago. The timing of her question wasn't accidental. I met her gaze, didn't flinch. "Still interviewing." "Oh," she said, tapping her fork. "Well, I suppose with how things are going, theft might start looking tempting, huh?" She laughed like it was a joke. Nobody else did. My heart stopped for a second. My jaw clenched. Julian kept sipping his wine like he hadn't heard a thing. The kids looked down at their plates. Even Mom stayed silent. I stood up slowly. "Excuse me a minute." I made my way to the bathroom, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Behind the locked door, I sat on the edge of the tub and exhaled. Then I saw the missed call. Franklin, an old client. Voicemail. I played it. His voice was sharp, wounded. "I didn't expect this from you, Bruce. You're better than this." What the hell? I played it again. Same words, no details. Just that tone. Disappointed, accusatory. My stomach twisted. Someone was planning something. I didn't know what, but I knew the look Nadine gave me wasn't random. And Julian pretending not to hear. That wasn't new. That was calculated. I washed my face, stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, but not broken. Not tonight. When I returned to the dining room, I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just looked, really looked, at each of them. Something in me had changed. I stepped outside pretending to need air, but really just needing space. My car was parked under the same dim streetlight it always had been, like it never moved. Like I never moved. I opened the door, sat down, and shut the world out. Then I played the voicemail again. You used to be honorable, Bruce. I didn't expect this from you. Franklin's voice echoed in that same calm way he always spoke. But this time, it cut. He didn't explain. Just disappointment, wrapped in a blanket of ambiguity. What the hell was he talking about? I played it a second time, third, fourth. The words didn't change, but the weight of them grew heavier. Better than this, he'd said, like I'd done something shameful. I called him back. Straight to voicemail. I left a short message, tight, careful. Hey Frank, got your message. Not sure what that was about, but give me a call, all right? Then I sat there, my fingers gripping the steering wheel as if it could anchor me to sense. I hadn't done anything, not in months, not even close to something that had deserved this tone. I thought through every client, every email, every conversation since the layoff. Nothing came up, but the pit in my stomach told me this wasn't just miscommunication. It was poison. Someone fed him something rotten, and they were smiling while they watched me taste it. Back inside the house, the air felt thicker. My eyes scanned more than they blinked. Julian was in the kitchen whispering to our cousin Trevor, their heads tilted in just enough to hide their lips like middle schoolers passing notes. When they noticed me watching, Trevor gave a half smile like he'd been caught but didn't care. Nadine glanced at me. Everything okay? Her voice had syrup, but no sweetness. I nodded once. I wasn't part of the family tonight. I was the evening's exhibit, something they were circling, taking notes on. It took me back to sophomore year, when someone spread a lie about me taking answers off a test. The whispers came first, then the silence, then the principal's office. I was innocent then too, but the silence always felt like guilt. A voice from the past came to mind, Mr. Halbert, my old mentor. He once told me, some people don't stab you in the back, they hand you the knife and smile while you figure out what it's for. I sat down, same chair, same room, but this time I wasn't looking to belong. I was watching. Julian leaned back, stretched like nothing was wrong, then casually asked, Hey, remember that consulting gig you had? That energy firm project? My heart didn't race, but it leaned forward. Which one? I asked flatly. You know, the one with those numbers that didn't add up at first. Remember that mess? Trevor joined in. Oh yeah, wasn't that the one with the accounting issue? I smiled politely. There were a few messy books, but nothing I wasn't cleared on. Their words were too neat, too prepared, like lines from a play they'd rehearsed backstage. Nadine chimed in, swirling her wine. You've always been too trusting, Bruce. That's not a bad thing, just dangerous. And there it was. I didn't bite. I said something vague, neutral, and waited for the next jab. But it didn't come. Instead, Claire, my niece, sat unusually still, phone angled downward on her lap. Her thumb tapped the screen like she was texting, but her eyes didn't move. She was recording. This wasn't a dinner. It was a setup. I forced a grin, stood slowly. Excuse me, I've got another call coming in. No one stopped me. I walked calmly outside, heart drumming against my ribs. Margaret, Trevor's wife, stood on the porch, arms folded, looking out toward the street. She turned when she saw me. You all right? She asked, softly. I shrugged. Guess that depends on what's being said when I'm not around. She looked around, then stepped closer. Be careful tonight. It's not you, it's them. I stared at her. You know something? She paused. Julian's been busy. Meetings, paperwork, lawyers. What kind of paperwork? She shook her head. I don't know, but look at what he's protecting lately. His assets, his name. I wanted more. Proof, paper, emails. But Margaret just touched my arm lightly. Start looking where it hurts them most. I didn't answer. Just walked to my car. I didn't drive home. I took a detour, out toward the office building where I'd spent the last decade building what I thought was purpose. If anything was planted, if any trail began, it started there. Sunday morning came heavy. I barely slept. My body moved out of habit, coffee, keys, door, while my head swirled with voices, doubts, and that damn voicemail. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Some places, you return to alone. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for a couple rusted sedans that probably belonged to the cleaning crew. My old office had been gutted by another company last year, but the second floor still sat untouched. Forgotten. Just like me. Roy, the old maintenance guy, was outside with a cigarette and the same beat-up Cubs cap he wore every day I knew him. "Bruce?" he said, surprised, squinting through the smoke. "Roy. Long time." He smiled, hesitant. "Didn't expect to see you back here." "I just need a few minutes," I said. "Closure, I guess." He paused, then pulled out his badge and handed it over. 15 minutes, tops. Inside it smelled the same. Paper, dust, and old coffee in the carpet. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt paused. Like something was still watching. I walked past the conference room where they blindsided me 2 years ago. I gave them years of cleanup, of late nights fixing other people's mistakes. All I got back was a signed exit package and silence. Down the hall, the server room still had the same keypad. Roy's badge opened it. I didn't know if it would, but it did. I sat down, entered my old credentials. Shockingly, they still worked. I went into the archive drives and dug deep. Client files, internal memos, backup logs, then something odd. An untouched folder labeled Legal Counsel, Julian N. Inside were emails dated before my termination, threads that mentioned me directly, threads I was never copied on. One subject line froze me. Liability Transfer Draft, BL. My name, BL. I opened the file. The timestamp read 1 month before I was forced out. The language, cold, strategic, legal jargon that boiled down to this: shift responsibility, protect Julian, isolate Bruce. And I leaned back, my throat dry. They weren't just letting me go. They were carving me out of the story, piece by piece. I searched for my last major project, Greystone, but the folder was gone. I found a renamed duplicate under JN Compliance Notes. Inside were modified spreadsheets, adjusted numbers, and budget approvals I never signed. I knew my signature, and this wasn't it. I printed what I could, took photos of the rest. I wasn't building a case. I was digging up my own grave. Julian's voice echoed in my memory. "Cover yourself before someone else buries you." I opened the meeting folder from 2020. They hadn't scrubbed the audio logs. I clicked one. My voice, clear as day, walking through project risks, timelines, asking for transparency. Then came Julian's whisper. "We'll restructure right after he's gone. I've already got signatures lined up." Another file. More laughter. Him and someone from legal mocking my Boy Scout crap and doing it by the book. They never planned to keep me. They used me as insulation. I copied every file to a drive and pocketed the prints. Walking out, I didn't feel victory. I felt violated. Just as I stepped into the lot, a black SUV passed by slow. Nadine. She didn't wave, just stared straight ahead. She'd followed me, or she was sent. Either way, it wasn't chance. I didn't run. I stood there until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Margaret. "I have what they tried to bury." I got the call around noon on Tuesday. Nadine, she never called me before, not directly. Her voice was polite, maybe even sweet, but there was something under it, too polished. She said she wanted to talk. Alone. Said she felt terrible about how Sunday night went and thought maybe dinner would help us get some clarity. She picked the spot, Jensen's, a high-end steakhouse just off Tryon. Private booths, thick curtains, low lights. It wasn't her usual taste. This was Julian's playground. I knew better, but I said yes anyway. I didn't go unarmed. My old recorder, small, dusty, still worked, was tapped beneath the inner lining of my coat. Full battery, new SD card. I wasn't going there for peace. I was going for proof. We met at 7:15. She was late by 10. Walked in dressed for a funeral, but smiled like it was prom night. Sat down like nothing was wrong. "Thank you for coming, Bruce," she said, her eyes trained on the wine list. Not me. I just felt we should talk. I nodded, watching the way she moved. Every word felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. She talked about misunderstandings, not mistakes. She brought up family tension, not betrayal. Then she leaned in and said softly, "You're not planning to do anything public, are you?" I met her eyes. "What do you mean by public?" "Oh, Bruce, you know how these things can spiral. One wrong step and people get hurt. Careers, families." There it was, the threat disguised as concern. "I'm not interested in hurting anyone," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm just looking for the truth." She smiled politely, took a sip of her red wine, then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, lips tight, and said, "Excuse me just a second," grabbing her napkin and stepping out. She left her purse, but not her phone, and she didn't lock the screen. My eyes caught the preview of a text from JK. Legal. The subject, tonight's final plan. My hand didn't shake, but my blood went cold. I stood slowly, made my way toward the hallway, pretending to head for the restroom. It curved right past the kitchen and led toward a small lounge area. Dimly lit, half-open door. I heard voices. Julian's first, calm, arrogant. "He won't go public. He's too careful." Then another voice, male, clipped, sharp. "If he does, we push the sealed HR file, the fake invoices. Let him explain tax fraud from 2018. My heart thudded in my ears. Julian laughed. "Man still thinks people care about intentions. He's too clean. That's the problem. We had to dirty him up just to make him believable." I leaned closer. The air felt heavier than it should. "That voicemail he got, that was bait," the lawyer said. "He bites, we flip the board, all legal, all clean." I gritted my teeth. This wasn't just about protecting themselves. They'd built this years back, layer by layer, like insurance. And now they were playing God with my life. I didn't burst in. I didn't say a word. I just hit record on the device and let it run. When I heard chairs scrape and footsteps approach, I backed into the hallway shadow and ducked into a coat closet. They passed by, talking low, laughing. I waited 10 seconds, then slipped back toward the dining room. Nadine was already seated, smiling like she'd just talked to an old friend. Her wine glass was topped off. Her act didn't slip for a second. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled back. "Fine. Just a quick call from an old friend." We finished the meal. I let her steer the conversation back to normal. Talked about the economy, real estate. She even laughed at one of my jokes. And I raised my glass at the end. To moving forward. She clinked it without hesitation. But inside I was already reworking everything. When we walked out to the valet stand, I hung back. She was texting, distracted. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a small black USB stick, and slipped it into the side pocket of her purse while she adjusted her scarf. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The file inside, a copy of Julian's voice promising to bury me with lies. I crossed the street and watched from behind a pillar as she opened her bag, saw the stick, and froze. I didn't wait for her to react. Because now, it was her move. I was sitting on the living room floor with a shoebox of old keepsakes I hadn't touched in years. I don't know what made me pull it out that night. Maybe I was looking for something to ground me. Something real, something untouched by Julian's fingerprints. Inside were old birthday cards, school photos, a dried rose from my mother's memorial. And then I saw it. An envelope with my name in her handwriting. I almost didn't open it. It wasn't sealed, just folded and tucked into the bottom. I unfolded the paper and read. She'd written it years ago. Never mailed it. Said she didn't know if I'd want to hear from her. She said she loved me, but she didn't know who to believe back then. That the rumors confused her. That part of her wondered if I really had done what they said. "I hope you understand someday that I was just scared," she wrote. It stopped me cold. She hadn't been angry. She was afraid. And maybe that was worse. I sat there, letter in hand, wondering how many other moments in my life had been steered by someone else's fear. By whispers, by doubt. How much damage had been done, not with fists, but with hesitation. I didn't cry. I just sat still, listening to the quiet. My heart didn't break. It hardened. Later that evening, I fired up the grill out back for Eli. He was rolling his little blue truck across the patio, making engine noises under his breath. It was a simple moment. Pure. Then Nadine and Julian showed up. Uninvited. Too casual. Like they were just dropping by. Eli ran to hug me. I picked him up, kissed the side of his head. As he wrapped his arms around my neck, he whispered, "Uncle Julian said everyone will believe him because he's good at lying." My arms froze. I stepped back, looking him in the eye. "What was that, bud?" He shrugged. I heard him say it to Aunt Nadine. They were laughing. He went right back to playing. And I stood there, grill forgotten, smoke curling into the dusk, heart thudding against my ribs. That one sentence out of Eli's mouth hit harder than anything I'd uncovered in the office files, because kids don't know how to lie with that kind of precision. Not about that. I tucked it away. Didn't react. Let them think the evening was just another casual Thursday. I tucked Eli into bed later, kissed his forehead, told him I loved him. And I meant it in a deeper way than before. Protecting him was no longer just about comfort. It was about truth. The next morning, Julian texted me. Said he wanted to meet at the Family Land Trust office. "Let's talk this out," he wrote. I showed up early. I didn't bring anger. I brought the letter. I brought my memory of Eli's voice. And I brought the clarity of someone done playing defense. They were all there when I arrived. Julian, his lawyer, Nadine. Julian started the meeting like he was the bigger man. "Bruce, I want peace. I want you to see I never meant for things to be taken this way." I held up the letter, my mother's handwriting trembling across the page. "You didn't mean for it to be taken this way," I said, "but you meant for it to land exactly here." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I quoted the letter, the fear, the doubt, the damage. Then I said softly, "Eli told me something last night. Said everyone believes you because you're good at lying." The room shifted. Julian's face didn't change, but his eyes twitched, barely, just enough. The lawyer leaned forward. "Bruce, let's not drag children into—" I held up a hand. "Save it. You all built this illusion, and now you're panicking because I'm still standing." Nadine looked shaken. Her lips parted, then closed again. I laid down the terms. "You have 3 days to retract everything. Publicly, no spin, no excuses, or I take it all to people who don't play nice." Julian scoffed. "You'll regret that." I leaned forward. "I've already regretted staying quiet." Nadine whispered, "Bruce, please." I looked at her. "I believed in all of you. I even covered for you when I shouldn't have. But I'm done holding shame that was never mine." No yelling, no table slamming, just silence. The kind that hums with finality. I walked out. Back at my place that evening, porch light barely cutting through the dark, I sat with the letter again. Not for closure, just to remind myself how long I let guilt own me. My phone buzzed twice. "Nadine, can we talk?" "Julian, think about what you're doing." I looked over at Eli's door. I got up, walked in, lay beside him for a minute. His breathing was steady, peaceful. Outside, the night was thick. You could almost taste the tension in the air. I walked back to the living room, opened my laptop, and wrote one line in an email to a local reporter I trusted. Attached files. Hit send, no drama, no announcement. Just action. I pulled into the Mercer estate just as the last threads of twilight faded. The front porch lights were already on, casting a soft amber glow over the familiar stone steps. The windows glowed warm, shadows shifting inside. They were all here. Of course they were. My hands didn't shake as I turned off the engine. Not tonight. In the inner pocket of my coat, I carried 2 things. The letter I'd found in that shoebox, the one my mother never sent, and a digital recorder, freshly loaded with a clip that would unravel what they all tried to keep hidden. The front door creaked as I stepped inside. The air held that old scent, wood polish, faint perfume, something else too, like time gone stale. Beatrice was seated by the fireplace, same as always, her posture straight, elegant, rehearsed. Julian lounged near the wet bar. Nadine sat stiff, barely acknowledging me. I nodded once. "Good evening." No one replied. Silence, thick and taut, filled the room. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Silence had been their weapon. Mine too once. Beatrice's eyes flicked to me. Just a flicker. But I caught the shift, the way her lips pressed together. Guilt. I stood before them all and turned to her. "Mom," I said, pulling out the envelope. "I found this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I opened the letter and read, not every word, just the ones that mattered, the ones that hadn't been meant for public ears, but were never meant to rot in silence either. You loved me, but you believed them, I said. You said you were scared. You hoped I'd understand one day. Her gaze fell to her lap. Her fingers twitched on the armrest. I do understand, I continued. You weren't cruel. You were afraid, but you let that fear shape the narrative, and that narrative almost destroyed me. Julian's jaw ticked. Nadine crossed her legs, leaned back. Beatrice's voice came out small. I didn't know. Not everything. Julian said, he said a lot of things. I pulled the recorder from my coat, pressed play. Nadine's voice came through crisp and clear. Just make sure the invoices show delay, not theft. We can't risk him connecting the numbers yet. A chill moved across the room. Julian moved forward. Bruce. No. I raised a hand. You've had your turn. The clip played on. Names. Instructions. Strategy. Beatrice's hand covered her mouth. Nadine's expression didn't flinch. She looked almost proud, but her silence was telling. I turned to Beatrice again. You didn't just fail to defend me. You let them weaponize your silence. Beatrice whispered, I didn't mean, but you let it happen. Julian stood now, puffing himself up. So what's your plan, Bruce? Public shaming? Take the family name down with you? I looked him dead in the eye. You retract everything. Publicly. You correct the lies. You come clean, or I go to the board. The clients. The press. I won't sit quietly while you all rewrite history to save face. Nadine let out a soft laugh. You always did think you were the noble one. Beatrice finally spoke up, shaky, broken. Please, don't tear this family apart. I quoted her letter back at her. You said you were scared. I lived in that fear. I've already been torn apart. Julian's lawyer spoke, sharp and dry. If you do this, there will be consequences. Legal, professional, personal. I stepped forward. Consequences. I already lost my name, my work, my mother's trust. I've lived the consequences. Now it's your turn. No one answered. Nadine got up and walked out. Julian's mouth opened, then shut. Even Beatrice couldn't meet my eyes. I walked out without another word. Outside, the night was colder than I remembered. Crickets chirped in the trees. I got in the car and drove with no direction, just miles and thoughts. Somewhere past midnight, I pulled into a scenic overlook. The city lights below looked peaceful, deceptive. I opened my phone and scrolled through contacts, found the one I'd been avoiding, Megan Walters, investigative journalist. We'd spoken once, years ago. Typed a message. Hi, Megan. I have something you'll want to hear. Discreetly. Attached the recording. My thumb hovered a second, then pressed send. I pulled into the driveway just after 9, the mansion dark except for a soft glow leaking through the windows of the study. Julian's message had been brief. Urgent family business. Come tonight. Inside, the air was heavy with stale whiskey and tension. I stepped into the study, and there it was, projected on a wide screen. My face, my voice, my supposed confession. Aurelia stood beside the screen like a host unveiling a twisted game show. We just wanted you to see what everyone else will, she said. Then she pressed play. The video was grainy, but sharp enough to sting. There I was, speaking in clipped sentences, spreadsheets on the screen behind me. I heard phrases I'd never spoken, references to mismanaged accounts, manipulated data. See how easy it was for Bruce to hide behind spreadsheets, Aurelia narrated, her voice smooth and smug. I didn't speak. My eyes scanned the room. Julian's lawyer smirked behind him. Beatrice sat pale and still, her hands clenched tight in her lap. My heart thudded low, not out of fear, but fury. This wasn't just a lie. It was a well-produced weapon. Julian stood slowly. This isn't personal. It's about protecting the family legacy. He said I had a choice. Retract my accusations or face consequences. Libel, slander, civil suits. My name would burn either way. Then Aurelia chimed in, casually cruel. You know what matters in these things? Belief, not truth. A cold wash ran down my back. That video was their trap, a story engineered to replace the real one. The room shifted. Cousins whispering, uncles avoiding my gaze. I asked for a glass of water. No one objected. I stepped into the hall, pulled the USB from my inside pocket, the one with the recording of Nadine and her lawyer mapping out their plot. My fingers were steady now. This was no longer defense. This was exposure. Back in the study, Julian and Aurelia were laughing at something I didn't care to understand. I slipped behind the desk, plugged in the USB, and opened the audio file. Hit play. The delay must look like his decision. We'll blame his pride. No one will question it. He has no allies, no proof. Nadine's voice. The laughter stopped. I turned the volume up. She said people will believe him because he has no witnesses, I added, stepping forward again. The audio played on, dates, figures, intentions laid bare. Even the family lawyer looked uncomfortable now. I stared at Julian. You call that a legacy? Julian's face reddened, and Aurelia's confidence faltered. Her shoulders tightened, lips pressed white. Beatrice looked between them, then at me, but she didn't say a word. I stepped toward the screen, pulled up the original spreadsheets I'd brought on another drive. Here's what the real numbers say. Look close. The timestamps don't lie. The room tightened. I could feel it. That shift when power tips from illusion back to truth. I quoted calmly, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Eleanor Roosevelt said that. I used to ignore it. Not anymore. Julian sputtered, trying to find footing. Aurelia hissed, "This won't hold up in court." "You're right," I said, "but it'll hold in front of the board. And maybe that's enough." Beatrice stood but didn't move, her eyes wet, hands trembling. Nadine reached toward me, guilt flickering behind her eyes. "Bruce, don't speak unless it's an apology," I cut her off. "And make it real." No one followed me as I walked out. The hallway was empty. Mirrors reflected back the man I was, no longer curled up in shame, no longer searching for approval. As I reached the front door, I heard footsteps. "Bruce!" Julian called. I paused, not out of fear, but curiosity. I turned around not to face another threat, but to see who I was willing to become next. Sunday crept in slower than it should have. I didn't sleep much the night before, too much running through my head, too many open wounds. By noon, I'd laid out everything across the dining room table. Emails printed, voice recordings queued, the original spreadsheets, timeline documents, timestamps, witness messages. I wasn't just telling my truth, I was building a case. Octavia came by with coffee and clear eyes. She didn't need to say much. She just sat down, helped sort through inconsistencies, checked dates, flagged anything that could be spun back on me. When it was all there, unshakable, sharp, complete, I opened my laptop. It was time. I thought about how many years I'd spent keeping my mouth shut to keep the peace. How many times I'd watched someone else get applauded while I was made to shrink. I started drafting. My statement wasn't emotional. It was factual, blunt, and backed by everything I had. I attached the audio of Nadine's conversation, a breakdown of how the documents were altered, and the matching video edits. The manipulated clip they used against me sat beside the original. It spoke for itself. I posted it to my professional profile, then to a public-facing platform. Tagged the company, tagged the board, sent direct messages to 2 journalists I trusted. Then I sat back, exhaled, and hit send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came the buzzes. Julian's office lights flicked on from the second floor. I heard footsteps, fast, phones ringing, voices bouncing off the walls like warning sirens. I stayed seated. Downstairs, the main hall was already full. A family dinner, neighbors invited, extended cousins, business partners passing through. Julian walked in with his usual confidence until his phone buzzed mid-step. He glanced at it, froze, then looked up. Right at me. Across the room, Beatrice was pouring iced tea. Her hands trembled. When she checked her own phone, her face went white. Someone else at the table spoke just loud enough. "Is this real?" More phones lit up. Guests stared down at their screens. My post was out. The video played on loop. Screenshots, transcripts, people scrolling, reading, whispers everywhere. Beatrice slowly set the picture down. "Cyrus," she said, her voice low. "You need to speak." Dad stepped forward. For a second, he looked 20 years older. He didn't raise his voice, didn't puff his chest. He just said, I was wrong. Silence fell like a curtain. He went on, his voice cracking in places. I approved revisions I didn't review closely. I trusted Julian's word instead of facts. I dismissed Bruce when I should have asked questions. Every eye in the room shifted to me. I failed my son, he said. Not just as a father, but as a man who should have known better. That broke something in me, something hard and bitter. Not tears, not joy, just release. People shifted in their seats, some nodded, some looked away. By nightfall, the story had hit the local news. They aired the edited and original videos side by side, ran clips from the audio. Commentary started rolling in, Mercer family scandal, allegations of internal fraud, longtime employee cleared. Julian's allies began distancing themselves, silent unfollowings, board members sending polite, vague inquiries, public relations firms circling like hawks. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Friends I hadn't heard from in years, ex-colleagues, strangers. Even Nadine called. She didn't beg, just said, I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't respond. She tried again. Bruce, I'm sorry. Not enough, I said. Not this time. Then I hung up. Later that night, the guests had all cleared out. The hall stood quiet, chandeliers dimmed to a dull glow. Beatrice had gone upstairs. Dad, too. Julian disappeared before dessert. I stood alone, staring at the space where it all unfolded. There's no clean ending to this kind of thing, no sudden applause. But justice, even messy, complicated justice, feels like oxygen after being underwater too long. I looked up at the framed portrait of my grandfather above the mantel, then thought of Eli. He deserves a world where truth isn't buried to protect the loudest voices. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from one of the journalists. Would you be willing to go live tomorrow morning? I smiled, tired but clear. I stepped outside into the cool night, air fresh, sky open. Somewhere behind me, Julian's world was burning, and this time, he'd have to answer for it. The morning after everything went public, I sat in my old bedroom, same walls, same view from the window, but nothing felt the same. Sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, casting long, tired shadows across the floorboards. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls from people I didn't know anything to anymore. Julian's in full spin control mode, reporters are circling, and I just sat there. Eli woke up early. He crawled beside me with his toy car and asked if I was okay. I told him, yeah, buddy, just thinking. He nodded like he understood more than I gave him credit for. He always does. Octavia stopped by with breakfast I didn't eat. She said Julian resigned from 2 board seats already. More to come, she added. I didn't react. I wasn't looking for revenge. That was never it. This was truth, finally clawing its way to the surface. And I remembered something my mother said a long time ago after she caught me lying about breaking a neighbor's window. The only real apology is doing better. I found my father in the garden later that afternoon, the same spot where he taught me to ride a bike, pushing the back of the seat, yelling, "Don't look down!" He was trimming hedges, slower now. His posture had changed. Everything about him felt smaller. He saw me, put the clippers down, and said, I don't expect anything from you, but I want to say it anyway. I was wrong about you. I looked him dead in the eye. You were wrong to me, not just about me. He didn't defend himself, just nodded. Then I told him something I'd rehearsed in my head for years, but never thought I'd say out loud. I forgive you, Dad. Not because you earned it, but because I'm done carrying your shame as my own. His face crumbled, not into sorrow, not into relief, just release. We sat there for a long while. Birds chirped. A breeze moved the branches. There weren't answers, just air between us that finally didn't feel poisoned. Later that week, I walked through the estate, room to room, not to remember, just to make peace. Beatrice was sitting near the piano. She didn't try to stop me, didn't say goodbye the way some people do when they know they're losing something. She just squeezed my hand. I'd made up my mind. Staying would be like sleeping in wet clothes. Familiar, maybe, but suffocating. That decision got clearer when I opened a letter from Marcus, a kid I mentored back in the foster system. He'd seen the news. He wrote, "You gave me a voice when I didn't have one. You still are." That sealed it. I called a meeting, just a handful of family, no cameras, no speeches. I'm donating my share of the estate to launch a legal aid foundation for kids like Marcus, for voices that get erased. Some clapped, some didn't. Julian never showed. I didn't care. Closure isn't about getting everyone to agree. It's knowing you no longer need them to. I packed light, a photo of Eli, a compass my grandfather gave me, and one framed quote I kept above my desk since college. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Before we left, I walked through the halls one last time, not searching for meaning, just clearing the dust from memory. My mother held me tight, didn't say much, just that she was proud. That was enough. In the car, Eli asked where we were going. I looked at him in the rear view and said, "Somewhere we can build, not rebuild." Octavia was in the front seat. She didn't speak either, just placed her hand over mine. Steady, present. Months passed. The opening ceremony for the Truth Justice Foundation was a modest one. Community center stage, folding chairs, kids with clipboards. I stepped up to the mic and tried to breathe. "My name's Bruce Mercer," I began. "And may no one ever be erased because they were inconvenient to believe." They clapped, not loud but long. In the crowd were people who'd survived worse than me. A few were crying. Some smiled like they understood what this moment meant. Not just for me, but for all of us. Julian was a name that didn't need saying anymore. Dad sat in the back row, alone, no longer trying to lead, just watching. And I didn't win back what I lost. I built something better in its place.